The Korean War, a conflict often overshadowed by World War II and the Vietnam War, left an indelible mark on global politics and the lives of millions. It was a war born from the ashes of Japanese imperialism, a struggle for control amidst the rising tensions of the Cold War. Korea, once a unified peninsula, found itself fractured along the 38th parallel, a line drawn in the sand that would soon become a battleground. In the north, Kim Il-sung, backed by the Soviet Union, aimed to unite the peninsula under communist rule. The south, under the leadership of Syngman Rhee and supported by the United States, sought to establish a democratic state. The stage was set for a conflict that would draw in global powers and leave a lasting legacy of division. On June 25, 1950, the fragile peace was shattered as North Korean forces surged across the 38th parallel. Armed with Soviet tanks and artillery, they caught the South Korean and U.S. forces by surprise. Seoul, the South Korean capital, fell within days. The invasion sent shockwaves through the international community, prompting a swift response from the United Nations. The United States, fearing the spread of communism, quickly committed troops to aid South Korea. The conflict quickly escalated into a proxy war, with the Soviet Union and China supporting the North and the United States leading a UN coalition in support of the South. The Korean War had become a major front in the burgeoning Cold War. The arrival of UN forces, primarily from the United States, helped to stabilize the front lines. The Incheon landing, a daring amphibious assault led by General Douglas MacArthur, succeeded in pushing back North Korean forces. Seoul was recaptured, and the tide of the war seemed to be turning. However, the conflict was far from over. As UN forces pushed further north, approaching the Chinese border, a new threat emerged. China, fearing an invasion of its territory and the presence of a US-backed state on its doorstep, entered the war in support of North Korea. The Chinese intervention marked a turning point in the war. Hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops poured across the border, catching the UN forces off guard. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir became a brutal testament to the ferocity of the fighting, with US Marines engaging in a desperate fighting retreat against overwhelming Chinese forces. The UN offensive was halted, and Seoul once again changed hands. The war settled into a bloody stalemate around the 38th parallel, with neither side able to achieve a decisive victory. The conflict had reached a deadly impasse. For 2 long years, the war raged on, marked by brutal battles and heavy casualties on both sides. Negotiations began in 1951, but a formal armistice would not be signed until July 27, 1953. The agreement established a demilitarized zone, DMZ, along the 38th parallel, effectively dividing the Korean Peninsula into 2 separate states. The war had exacted a heavy toll. Millions of Koreans, both military and civilian, lost their lives in the conflict. The peninsula lay in ruins, its people divided by ideology and the scars of war. The Korean War, though often referred to as the Forgotten War, left an indelible mark on the Korean Peninsula and the world. It solidified the division of Korea, creating 2 separate states with vastly different political and economic systems. The DMZ, a 250-kilometer-long and 4-kilometer-wide buffer zone, became a stark symbol of the Cold War and the enduring legacy of the conflict. The war also had profound implications for the Cold War, intensifying the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. It demonstrated the dangers of proxy wars and the devastating human cost of ideological conflicts. Even today, tensions remain high on the Korean Peninsula, a reminder of the unfinished business of the Korean War and the enduring quest for peace and reunification.